I was sitting in my living room, the late afternoon sun spilling through the curtains, when my son dropped the words that would change everything. "We're moving in tomorrow, Dad," he said, his tone firm, almost rehearsed. He didn't ask. He declared it, as if the house I'd worked my whole life to pay off, the home where his mother and I had built our lives, already belonged to him. I looked at him, my son, Michael, and, for a moment, I didn't recognize the man standing before me. His sharp suit, his polished shoes, and the way he carried himself, all screamed entitlement. Beside him, his wife Lauren crossed her arms, eyes scanning the walls like she was already planning where her new art would hang. "You can't live here alone anymore," Michael continued. "It's not safe for you. We've decided it's best if we take over the house. You'll stay in the guest room until we find you something smaller." I should have been crushed, humiliated, maybe even terrified. But instead, I smiled. A slow, steady smile that made Lauren frown and Michael stiffen. He thought he was delivering a verdict. He had no idea he was stepping into a trap, years in the making. Because what Michael didn't know was that the very house he was trying to seize had already been sold, and not to him. I remember the day everything began to unravel. It was 3 months ago, just after my wife, Margaret, passed away. I buried her alone. Michael hadn't come. Too busy, he'd said. Too many patients at the hospital. Too many responsibilities. But I'd seen the photos online. Him and Lauren sipping champagne on a yacht in the Bahamas, the same week I stood at Margaret's grave. Grief sharpens your memory. It burns away illusions. I thought back to the last years of Margaret's life, years where I was her caretaker day and night. When I begged Michael to visit, to spend just one weekend with his mother, he always had an excuse. "Lauren thinks it'll upset her too much. Lauren says it's better for professionals to handle it." Always Lauren. Always his wife speaking through him, until his voice didn't sound like my son anymore but like her puppet. And then, weeks after Margaret's funeral, Michael called. Not to ask how I was coping, not to share a memory of his mother, but to talk about what Lauren called my property situation. "Dad," he said over the phone, "it's not healthy for you to keep living in that big house alone. Lauren and I think you should sign it over to us. We'll make sure it's taken care of, and you won't have to worry." He framed it like compassion, but the coldness underneath told another story. When I hesitated, Lauren's voice chimed in on speakerphone. "Richard, grief can impair judgment. It's irresponsible for you to manage such a valuable asset while you're in this state. Think of your family. Think of your son." They weren't thinking of me. They weren't even thinking of Margaret's memory. They were thinking of $2.8 million tied up in bricks, beams, and land. That night, I sat at Margaret's old desk and pulled out my files. 8 years of medical bills I'd paid alone. Hundreds of unanswered calls to Michael. Receipts for the home modifications I installed so she could spend her last years here, in the house she loved. Every paper was a reminder. I carried this family, and when I needed support, they vanished. The bitterness cut deep, but beneath it, something else stirred. Resolve. They thought they could manipulate me into handing over the one thing Margaret and I had left. They thought grief had made me weak. They were wrong. For weeks, I stayed quiet, letting Michael and Lauren believe I was softening, that I might agree to their plan. They grew bolder with every call, Lauren always leading, Michael parroting her words like lines from a script. And then came today, when they stood in my living room with smug certainty, announcing they were moving in tomorrow. Lauren leaned against the doorway, already critiquing the decor, already erasing Margaret from the walls. Michael adjusted his tie, pretending he was acting out of duty, but the hunger in his eyes gave him away. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands, and let silence hang for a moment. Then I said, softly but clearly, "That's interesting, son," because I already signed a contract regarding this house. Michael froze. Lauren straightened, her arms uncrossing, eyes narrowing. "What contract?" she asked, her voice sharper now, stripped of its sweet veneer. "The sale contract," I said, $2.8 million, effective immediately. The blood drained from Michael's face. Lauren's composure cracked just for a second, and I knew in that moment they realized the ground beneath them wasn't solid. It was quicksand. And I was the one who'd set the trap. But this was only the beginning. Lauren recovered first. "You're bluffing," she said, though her voice wavered. "No one buys a $2.8 million property without an inspection, without months of due diligence. Show us the contract." I stood, slow and steady, and walked to Margaret's old desk. The drawer slid open with the familiar whisper I'd heard 1,000 times. I took out a thick navy blue folder, placed it on the coffee table, and flipped it open so they could see the gold-stamped letterhead. Michael leaned in, his pupils tightened. Harbor and Finch title, closing memorandum. Lauren's eyes flicked across the first page, buyer's name, wire confirmation, recordation date pending. Her jaw clenched. Who was the buyer? "A foundation," I said. "The Whitaker Community Trust. They build housing for caregivers and medical staff. Your mother would have liked that." Michael blinked, processing. "A foundation? You sold it to charity?" "Not charity," I corrected gently. "A trust with a mission. They paid full market value, in cash, and they gave me a life estate. Do you know what that means, son?" He swallowed. "You stay. For life." "I stay on my terms," I said. "My home, my rules. And when I'm gone, this place becomes respite housing for families taking care of someone like your mother. People who show up." The room went very still. Lauren crossed her arms again, but it was armor now, not confidence. "Even if you sign something, it's not final. Not until recording. We can stop this. Michael," she said, turning to him, "call Ethan. Now." "Who's Ethan?" I asked, though I already knew. "Our attorney," she snapped, "and a very good one." "Of course, there's always an Ethan." I let them whisper while I took my time in the kitchen, rinsing 2 coffee mugs that still smelled faintly of French roast and Saturday mornings with Margaret. My hands didn't shake. When I returned, Lauren's phone was on speaker. A smooth voice was laying out a plan. "Temporary injunction on grounds of diminished capacity," Ethan was saying. "We'll argue the sale was the product of undue influence and grief. We petitioned for an emergency evaluation. If we get a guardian ad litem appointed—" "Stop," I said softly, setting the mugs down. "Ethan, is it? You might want to hear what you're up against before you file anything." Silence. Then, "I'm listening." I tapped the blue folder. "You're assuming I wandered into a notary office yesterday and scribbled my name. This began months ago. Independent neurocognitive screening? Done. Twice. Doctor Patel and Dr. Greer reports attached. Financial capacity evaluation by a CPA who doesn't know my family from Adam? Done. A cooling off period between contract and closing? 30 days during which I obtained separate counsel and re-signed. Every signature was witnessed and recorded. I even made sure the buyer is represented by a firm you don't want to tangle with in open court." Lauren's mouth tightened. Michael stared at the rug. "And one more thing," I added. "Every call since the funeral, recorded. Every threat to move in tomorrow, saved. Every suggestion that I'm impaired, archived. I'm just a retired shop teacher, but I do know how to label a file." Ethan's polished tone dulled. "Mr. Whitaker." "Wilson," I corrected. "Richard Wilson." "Mr. Wilson, we'll be in touch." Lauren exhaled through her nose a hard, hot sound. "So that's your plan? Hide behind paperwork? Sell your home out from under your son?" "My plan," I said, "was to keep your hands off your mother-in-law's memory." Michael finally spoke, quiet and raw. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried," I said. "For 8 years I tried. Every time, there was a reason not to come. A flight, a surgery, a cruise, and lately, a plan to move in and supervise me." I met his eyes. "You didn't want a conversation, son. You wanted control." He looked down, His shoulders sagged in a way I hadn't seen since he was 12. Lauren stepped between us. Enough. We're not leaving. We'll be here in the morning with boxes. If you want a scene, you'll get one. I smiled again, the same smile that had scared her 10 minutes earlier. Be my guest, I said, and slid a second document from the folder. But you'll be moving into a property you don't own, protected by a recorded life estate, with a new owner who has campus security on speed dial. And small detail, the trust director is unveiling the acquisition at the hospital gala on Thursday. Press will be there. So will your department, Michael. That landed. His eyes flashed to Lauren. She didn't flinch, but I saw the calculation start to wobble. Thursday, Michael said. Thursday, I repeated. There's a plaque with your mother's name on it waiting backstage. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 6. Lauren grabbed her bag. We'll be back, she said, with counsel. Bring everyone, I said, but bring your best behavior too. The cameras will be rolling. They left without another word. The door closed. The house exhaled. I stood alone in the quiet and ran my hand along the banister Margaret used to polish, feeling the wood's soft shine under my fingertips. On the kitchen counter, my phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. Mr. Wilson, this is Claire from Whitaker Trust. We just received a call from a Jennifer asking about your sale. She says she's family. Would you like us to respond, or would you prefer we let her find out on Thursday? I typed back, let her find out with the rest of the city. Then I picked up the Navy folder, walked to my study, and opened the bottom drawer where the older files weighted the ones Michael didn't know existed. At the top was a memory card labeled in Margaret's careful handwriting, for when the truth needs witnesses. I slid it into the recorder and pressed play. The recorder whirred, and Margaret's voice filled the study, fragile but steady. Richard, if you're hearing this, it means Michael didn't come back. It means Lauren won. My throat tightened. I remembered the night she'd whispered into that recorder, her hand shaking as I held the microphone closer. Her illness had stolen so much, but not her clarity. I want people to know, she continued. Michael wasn't always like this. He was kind once. But Lauren, she convinced him family was a burden. She told him caring for me would ruin his future. I heard her say it through the phone, and he believed her. If he ever tries to take our home, Richard, don't let him. Don't let them rewrite who we were. The message ended. I sat in the silence, tears pressing behind my eyes, but the grief wasn't sharp anymore. It was a blade I could finally hold without bleeding. The next day, my phone buzzed again, Michael. His voice was low, urgent. Dad, listen. Lauren's furious. She says you embarrassed us with that contract stunt. She's planning something big. An injunction, maybe even filing for guardianship. Please, can we talk before she does it? You want to talk now? I asked. After ignoring me at your mother's funeral? A pause. I know. I was wrong. But Dad, she's relentless. I don't think I can stop her. That admission twisted my stomach. My son, the boy who once wanted to be a firefighter like me, was now so bent he couldn't stand up to his own wife. Michael, I said quietly, you'll have a choice soon. Her or the truth. Before he could answer, the line went dead. By Wednesday, the rumors had started. A neighbor mentioned seeing Lauren at the courthouse. A former colleague sent me a clipped article, whispers about an impending competency case involving a prominent doctor's father. It was spreading in the wrong circles. That night, Mrs. Davis knocked at my door again. She held a printout in her hands. Richard, I think you should see this. It was a LinkedIn post, Lauren's profile photo, smiling confidently. Navigating difficult family transitions requires compassion and legal clarity. Proud to be guiding my family through one of the toughest, most necessary decisions of our lives. Below, colleagues praised her professionalism. Clients offered support. And Michael? He'd liked the post. The fury that burned in my chest could have leveled the house. They weren't just stealing my home, they were stealing the narrative. painting themselves as heroes while I was cast as the frail old fool. Enough. Thursday morning arrived. The hospital gala was that evening. The Margaret Wilson Memorial Research Wing would be announced, broadcast live to donors and press. And I intended to make sure the right story reached every ear. I ironed my best Navy suit, polished my shoes, and packed the Navy folder with everything: the sale contract, the neurocognitive reports, the recordings of Michael and Lauren plotting, and, at the very top, Margaret's message. At noon, Patricia Miller, my attorney, called. "Richard, I've heard rumblings. Jennifer is preparing to file an emergency petition tonight, possibly during the gala. They'll claim you were manipulated into selling, that your grief made you incompetent." "Then tonight's the perfect stage," I said. "They want witnesses, let's give them an audience." She hesitated. "Richard, if you play this wrong, they'll twist it further. They'll call you vindictive." "I don't need revenge," I said. "I need the truth." Evening came. The hospital's grand ballroom shimmered under chandeliers, the tables draped in white linen, name cards neatly placed. Cameras lined the back. Doctors, administrators, attorneys, donors, all dressed in black ties and gowns. I felt Margaret everywhere. In the flowers on the tables. In the quiet piano music playing her favorite sonata. At the far end of the room, I spotted them: Michael in his tailored suit, Lauren in a crimson dress that screamed dominance. She walked like she owned the place, smiling at every handshake, whispering confidently into colleagues' ears. Michael trailed behind, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Helen Rodriguez, the hospital's development director, stepped to the podium. "Tonight, we honor an extraordinary gift, a donation that will transform Alzheimer's research in this city forever." Applause swelled. My heart pounded. "Please welcome Richard Wilson." I stood, folder in hand, and walked to the podium. The cameras turned, the lights sharpened, and every eye in the room fixed on me. I adjusted the microphone, took a breath, and said, "This gift is not just about money, it's about truth, and tonight, you're going to hear it." Lauren's smile froze. Michael's head dropped into his hands. The trap was about to close. I let the silence settle, long enough that even the waiters froze in place with trays of champagne. Then I opened the Navy folder and placed it on the podium, its edges catching the spotlight. "For 8 years," I began, my voice steady. "I cared for my wife, Margaret, while she fought Alzheimer's. I did it alone. Not because she didn't have a son, but because he and his wife decided their careers, their vacations, their comfort mattered more than showing up." A low murmur rippled through the room. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Lauren kept her smile, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. "I begged them to visit," I continued. "On birthdays, on holidays, even in the final days, when Margaret asked for her boy with what little strength she had left. And do you know what I got instead?" I pressed play on the recorder hidden inside the folder. Michael's voice filled the room, tinny but clear. "Dad, Jennifer thinks it's better if we don't come. It's healthier for us to maintain boundaries." Gasps spread across the ballroom. A few doctors turned their heads toward Michael, their expressions tightening. And while Margaret lay in hospital beds, while I worked 2 jobs to pay bills they never touched, this is what Jennifer was posting. On the projector screen behind me, Helen clicked through slides photos I had given her in advance. Lauren sipping wine in Napa, Lauren lounging poolside in Miami, Lauren clinking champagne glasses in Aspen. Each timestamp aligned with one of Margaret's hospital stays. "This," I said, voice rising, "is what they called boundaries." The whispers grew louder now, a current of disapproval washing over the tables. Even Brandon's colleagues, the ones who used to brag about his skill in the operating room, were exchanging uneasy looks. I turned the page in the folder and held up another document. "And when Margaret passed, and I was still grieving, they didn't come to comfort me. They came for this house. They wanted me declared incompetent. They told me my grief made me unfit to make decisions." I pressed play again. Michael's voice, this time colder. "Dad, Jennifer thinks the responsible thing would be to transfer the property into competent hands before you make irreversible mistakes." Then Lauren's voice, crisp and commanding. "Tell him about guardianship, Brandon. Remind him the law will side with us." The room went dead silent. Dr. Thompson, Michael's department head, leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Dr. Wilson, is that your voice?" Michael's mouth opened, closed. He nodded faintly, his face red. Lauren snapped upright. "This is manipulation. These are private conversations, illegally recorded." Before I could answer, Patricia Miller rose from the back of the room. "Not illegal," she said firmly. "Ohio is a one-party consent state. Richard had every right to record, and those recordings will hold up in any courtroom." Cameras swung to capture her words. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. Lauren's smile had completely vanished now. She looked cornered, her mask stripped away in front of the very network she depended on. "And just so there's no doubt," I said, sliding out the final piece, the signed sale contract. "This home isn't theirs to steal. It has already been sold. The $2.8 million has funded the Margaret Wilson Memorial Research Wing, which opens next year. My wife's name will live on not as property to be fought over, but as hope for families who actually choose to care for each other." Applause erupted, some tentative, some fierce. The hospital board members stood, doctors clapped, cameras flashed like fireworks. But not everyone was clapping. Michael sat frozen, his hands gripping the table as if it were the only thing holding him upright. His colleagues were whispering now, some shaking their heads. Lauren's face had gone pale, her jaw tight with fury. And then, from the crowd, a voice shouted, "Shame on you." It wasn't me, it was Dr. Chen, Margaret's neurologist, standing tall. "Shame on both of you," she said, pointing toward Michael and Lauren. "You abandoned your mother, and now you tried to rob your father." The room buzzed with outrage. Reporters surged forward. Lauren's composure finally cracked. She grabbed Michael's arm. "We're leaving," she hissed. They stood, stumbling under the weight of the stairs that followed them, the judgment burning hotter than any legal battle could. As they pushed toward the doors, I leaned closer to the microphone one last time. "You wanted to move in tomorrow, Michael, but tonight, you've already been moved out of every lie you tried to build." The applause that followed wasn't just for me. It was for Margaret, for every caregiver, for every truth they had tried to bury. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't carrying this fight alone. The next morning, the fallout began. Headlines hit faster than I could refresh the newsfeed. "Surgeon and lawyer exposed. In father's $2. 8M revenge. Reveal. Hospital gala turns into family scandal. Widower outs son's abandonment. Donates home to Alzheimer's research." Michael's name was plastered across every outlet, his face frozen mid-expression in photos taken the moment the recordings played. Lauren, once the rising star of her law firm, was now trending for all the wrong reasons. By noon, Morrison and Blake had issued a statement. The firm has suspended attorney Lauren Wilson pending an internal ethics review. Within 48 hours, she was terminated. Her colleagues, the same ones who used to smile at her polished speeches, now whispered about her arrogance and ambition, about how she'd weaponized the law for personal gain. Michael didn't fare better. Dr. Thompson summoned him into a private meeting immediately after the gala. Word spread quickly. The hospital board had opened an ethics investigation into his conduct. Rumors circulated that his license was at risk, not just for professional misconduct, but for dragging his medical authority into a family scheme. I didn't have to lift a finger. The truth had done all the work. 2 weeks later, Michael showed up at my condo. He didn't knock, just stood outside, his suit wrinkled, his face hollow. When I opened the door, he looked like a man who had aged 20 years in as many days. "Dad," his voice cracked. "Lauren left me. She said I ruined her career. She said she can't be with someone who let their father humiliate her publicly." I stayed silent, letting the weight of his words sink in. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," Michael continued. "I should have been there for Mom. I should have been there for you. But I let Lauren control everything. She said it was better to stay away. that it was for my own good, and I believed her, because it was easier than facing the truth. He lowered his eyes, tears streaming freely now. I can't fix what I did to Mom, but maybe I can try to fix what's left with you. Please, let me help at the research wing. I want to honor her too. For a long moment, I just studied him, the boy Margaret once cradled, the man he had become, and the broken son standing in front of me now. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part remembered Margaret's voice, whispering in her final days, "Don't give up on him completely." Finally, I stepped aside. You can volunteer, but understand this. Our relationship is not a gift. It's not an inheritance. It has to be earned. Michael nodded slowly, relief and shame mingling in his eyes. I'll earn it, Dad. I promise. Months passed. The Margaret Wilson Memorial Research Wing opened to applause, its shining glass halls filled with hope and purpose. Doctors and researchers walked the corridors, armed with funding that might one day save families from the same suffering Margaret endured. Michael was there on opening day not as a celebrated surgeon, but as a volunteer, carrying chairs, serving coffee, wiping down tables. He worked quietly, no cameras, no spotlight. For once, he didn't look like a man chasing prestige. He looked like a son finally learning the meaning of responsibility. And as I stood under the dedication plaque, her name etched forever in steel, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Because revenge, when done right, isn't just about destruction. It's about truth. It's about setting things right in a world that tried to twist love into weakness. Margaret's memory was safe now. Her legacy was alive in those walls, in every patient helped, in every family spared the loneliness we endured. As for Michael, only time would tell if he could rebuild what he had shattered. But one thing was certain, the house he thought he could take was never truly mine to give. It belonged to Margaret, and through her, it now belonged to everyone who still believed in love strong enough to fight.